My face is on the air. Hey, welcome to Monkey Time. My name's Todd. We're live from 8 to 8:30 every Wednesday. There's the number if you want to do it. I've posted a couple of links before the show. I usually don't tweet a whole lot, but I usually try to post a couple things on Wednesday, and then usually along the end of the week, I tweet a few more things. I find such interesting stuff, Carol, but I don't know. I've just been kind of depressed lately. Don't you hate it when people lie right to your face? Don't you hate that, Carol?
I do hate that.
I hate that. They just lie right to you. You know what's even worse, Carol? Never mind. I'll stop. Okay, because I will just spiral into more like fury. And we've got the newspaper to help us spiral into fury. And it's so much better, Carol, when you can spiral into fury over something over there rather than right here. Oh, I love this. Duke's actually complaining that the Senate, the Republican Senate, is like 15 years is like too much to clean up their coal ash ponds. These are completely unregulated. Remember, coal ash is not considered a toxic waste. It's not treated at the federal level as a toxic waste. It's completely toxic waste. All we're asking is let's regulate it like such. And it's just not. And so Duke, Carol, it must be said, with the acquiescence of the Democratic Party throughout the 90s and early 2000s, it's not just the Republicans who've taken over, but they're the ones in charge now, so they're the ones we can look at and say, what are you going to do? The Democrats love Duke Power's money, so they did nothing to clean up coal ash. But now we got the coal ash spill. And so you've got Republicans who Art Pope's probably going, just wait a year or two, people will forget about it, right? That's how we are. And that's how Art Pope thinks. They'll just forget about it. But we can't afford to forget about it. Because these coal ash ponds, these unregulated, unlined coal ash ponds are all over North Carolina. And Duke is saying, 15 years is too long to clean them up. They should be regulated as toxic waste at the federal level. We'll see what the Republicans finally come up with. They get a lot of press, Carol, and McCrory gets a lot of press for announcing big raises, blah, blah. But let's look at what actually happens with the budget. Let's look at what we actually get on coal ash at the end of this legislative session. Let's look at all Pat McCrory's proposals for let's help, we're now 46th in the country on teacher salaries. Yeah. That may not be the best. So they're finally realizing maybe that doesn't look so good. They don't care about teachers and teacher pay, but they're realizing there's a PR problem here. So, and we're losing a lot of teachers. The smarter ones on the Republican side are recognizing that this is just horrible for the state. We're losing a lot more teachers than usual. Turnover's higher than usual.
Texas taking them away.
Right? Carol says Texas taking them away. Whoops. Sorry, my bad. Okay, we're good. My foot caught on the wire and clicked it, but I pulled it off. But amateur TV at its finest, right? My knowledge is still better than anybody else's on television. No, there's some good commentators out there. WRAL's Capital folks at NC Capital, I think is what they're called on Twitter. They're great. They're doing really good stuff. And John Frank at the NNO has decent coverage too. Of what's the goings on at the legislature. So there are good people out there doing good local news coverage, which is a change from 10 years ago, that's for sure. No, I'm serious. I really do think that's true, especially on RAL's part. So, what was I talking about?
We gotta pick a topic.
No. I was talking about the budget. Right? Yeah, and the teacher salaries. Oh, yeah. So Pat McCrory got all this press about, teacher salaries, we need to raise them at the earlier part of the year. But like last year when he proposed all these grand schemes that got a lot of press, the Republican legislature included almost nothing of Pat McCrory's agenda in its final legislative output. So let's see if that also holds true this year. Pat McCrory, one of the things the legislature is doing, in the House anyway, is they're trying to push to increase lottery advertising. To increase the lottery advertising budget, Carol. This is Nelson Dollar. Nelson Dollar, who's from Cary, right? The genius, who's now in the House, the North Carolina House, kind of leading the budget in the North Carolina House. He's the one who's been pushing for this. Well, let's just increase the budget for advertising in the North Carolina in the North Carolina lottery, and then we'll get a lot more lottery money back, and then that'll help pay for the teacher salaries, the teacher raises. But what we found out through the NNO on June 13th, and then NC Policy Watch, ncpolicywatch.com, really, really good site with the Chris Fitzsimmons and all those guys over there. What is the name of that? Not the North Carolina Justice Center. I forget, guys. I'm sorry. It's been a long, depressing day. So what was I saying? Oh yeah. So it really has been a long, depressing day. And then I read the papers, and it's just like, ah. So what they're trying what Nelson Dollar was saying was that they could get another $100 million to pay for teacher salaries by increasing the lottery's advertising budget. And remember, Republicans were against this, Carol. The only way some Republicans signed on and allowed the Democrats to pass the lottery back in 2005 was by putting limitations on the advertising so that they couldn't yay, look at all these cool things you could do if you won the lottery, and instead just doing it's for education, it's a fun game, that kind of boring advertising. So now Nelson Dollar and Republicans are actively pushing more advertising for the lottery as a way to pay for teacher salaries, when Republicans were actively constraining advertising from the lottery. I think rightly so, Carol. We have been consistent on this show against the lottery. North Carolina Policy Watch had a great by the numbers this Monday. There are 28 counties in North Carolina where people spend more than $300 a year per capita on the lottery. 28 counties in North Carolina where people that's per person. Now, Carol, there are a lot of people in a county that don't play the lottery, right? There are 28 counties out of 100 in North Carolina where people spend each per cap, if you average it out, over $300 a year. In all 100 counties, Carol, $238 per person in North Carolina. How much you spent on the lottery last year, Carol?
$0.
I might have spent $2. Carol says 0. There's a lot of people spending an awful lot of their poverty level paychecks on the lottery. And Nelson Dollar, the genius, his solution to raising teacher pay is let's advertise to those poor people at the bottom who play the lottery a lot. Let's advertise more to them to get them to shell out more of their dollars in this pipe dream of winning the lottery so that we can pay teacher salaries. That's Nelson Dollar of Kerry's idea for funding teacher salaries, which they cut down to 46th in the country in the last legislative session. Right? Pat McCrory last year, Carol, now put up the next one. There we go. He actually came out against lottery advertising, saying it's bloated, their budget's bloated, and the frankly annoying lottery advertising, right? Pat McCrory hasn't said word one about this. I'm not going to negotiate with the House in the press, he says. Dude, you already said it. Do you still believe it or not? Democrats on the left and religious moral objectors to the lottery on the right, far left Democrats and far right Republicans, or moral Republicans, I suppose. Well, I don't want to say moral because the far lefters are moral on the Democratic side. Moral Democrats on the left and moral Republicans on the right. Is that better, Carol? Have been the only ones consistent. The lottery is bad news. Carol, out of those 28 counties, 9 counties in North Carolina last year have a per capita average, per person spending on the lottery of over $400 a year. All 9 are in eastern North Carolina, one of the poorest parts of the state. 9 counties have a per person average per year of and that's the people in the poorest part of the state. All 9 of those counties are in eastern North Carolina. Nelson Dollar wants to pay teachers on the back of. That's how they're funding the lottery, or the budget in North Carolina. That's the Republicans in charge right now. Look, I'm talking to people on the right, I'm talking to people on the left. Once they get in power, they get mainstream, it's all about serving the rich. They don't give 2 craps about the poor. Nelson Dollar trying to raise teacher pay on the backs of those 9 counties in eastern North Carolina, poor people who pay the lottery. That's just disgusting. It's despicable behavior from Nelson Dollar. He lives just down the road. That's his district, just down the road. Just completely despicable behavior. That's just the kind of, it's a mean-spirited, pinched, awful view of humanity that allows someone like Nelson Dollar to say, let's up the advertising budget for the lottery and that'll pay for those teacher salaries.
Not even thinking where it's coming from.
That's just, he knows where it's coming from. Carol was like, not even thinking where it's coming from. He knows exactly. He knows, yeah, it's not coming from Carrie. Yeah, that's right. He knows exactly where it's coming from. Nelson Dollar is a despicable person when he suggests this. All right, it's the behavior, not the person, right, Carol? When he's suggesting that and working towards that, he's a despicable person. All right, God, can you believe it? Can you believe it? And then also, here's the best part, Carol. You ready? Here's the best part. I'll move on after this. The best part, as the NNO reported, is that lottery staffers actually gave them an analysis that said, no, we're not going to get 100 million. You're going to get closer to like 105 million. You're going to get closer to 59 million. And Nelson Dollar and legislative staffers got this and still are suggesting that they can balance the budget or pay for these teacher raises with projections that the lottery people themselves say won't work.
How much were they going to spend on the advertising? Did they have that number?
How much were they going to spend on the advertising?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the total budget was. They say that, well, in order to raise what they call 100 million, you have to spend like 450 million, something like that. 425 you need to spend to get what they suggest. So you have to spend all this money on to increase the budget to get more out of the lottery. And the projections they were giving, Nelson Dollar was giving, were complete bullcrap according to the lottery staffers. And Nelson Dollar's like, no, we had a previous survey that says that would, whatever. The lottery staffers told you this, and you didn't share that with us. All right. Okay, let's move on to Iraq, shall we? It's time again for war. Look, 10 years ago, when the Bush neocons, Wolfowitz, Cheney, all these people, right, and their friends in the media, Bill, what's his name, Crystal, and all those guys, when they were shoving us in the direction of war and making up evidence. Remember the Winnebagos of death?
Yes.
The Winnebagos of death. These were Winnebagos filled with chemical weapons that Saddam was using to create mobile. Yeah, train cars, you know, the Winnebagos of death, the mobile chemical weapons labs, right? They were all over. And you know, Colin Powell went to the United Nations, the nice black man went to the United Nations and actually said this crap, and he knew at the time it was crap. We actually find out later that he looked at the evidence and said, this is bull S to the people who handed him the evidence, and then went in front of the United Nations anyway. Colin Powell will always go down in history as a coward for that. Sorry. He had a chance to stand up and say they're lying, they're shoving us into a war that we can't afford, that will kill lots of innocent people, and they're creating evidence. He knew it was bullcrap when they handed it to him in private, and he still played the good soldier and went up there and went to the United Nations. I still remember the NNO's op-ed the day after Colin Powell's testimony. Maybe it was 2 days after Colin Powell's testimony. That was very believable. Meanwhile, everybody online who was actually looking at that evidence was like, this is really flimsy. That was one of the first moments when I was like, wow, the internet is awesome. Actually, it wasn't one of the first moments. It was like, yeah, this is another moment where the internet is awesome. You could go and look at the evidence yourself and see, like, this is total bullcrap. It's flimsy, it's complete. But the NNO editorial writers, the geniuses, the publisher of the NNO at the time, you know, George Quarles, I think it was even then, you know, they believed it. They've still never apologized for, you know, saying, yes, let's go to war, let's bomb Iraq. Shock and awe. Dead babies, you know, fathers holding their dead children, their dead daughters and dead sons because of U.S. bombs in civilian areas. Oh, it's just the most disgusting thing. But now they're back. They're back. Back in 2003, all of us who said this occupation is going to be idiotic. We're going to leave, they're going to wait us out. Same thing with Afghanistan. They know that the United States has a short attention span. right? Everybody was pushing for the U.S. to come out in 2008. Everybody was like, yes, let's get out. Let's get our boys and girls out. Now suddenly it's Obama's fault, right? Suddenly it's Obama's fault that the rebels have come in. And now we need to bomb. And now Paul Wolfowitz is saying this is al-Qaeda again. Ignoring the fact, and if you go to my Twitter page, I linked to a couple of articles about this, al-Qaeda actually denounced ISIS in February because they attack Muslims, right? Indiscriminately. It's so complex, Sunni Muslims versus Shiite Muslims, but the bottom line is al-Qaeda back in February denounced these ISIS people. But now you have the Bush neocons back in vogue, Paul Wolfowitz saying, let's just call them al-Qaeda, they're al-Qaeda. It's like, no, we listened to you once before and your lies back in 2003 on Iraq and got in a mess that cost us trillions of dollars that could have been spent here in the United States. That wasn't. We occupied a country, we bombed, occupied a country. The level of corruption in the contractors that we hired to rebuild, with the money that disappeared, billions of dollars disappeared in Iraq, disappeared under Bush. Billions of dollars, US dollars, disappeared from our economy, from our government, into the black hole of Iraq. Billions. And now Wolfowitz is back saying we need to start going in and invading. It was a disaster from the get-go. And 10 years ago, we were trying to tell you people it was going to be a disaster and that they were going to just wait us out. And eventually the United States was going to pull its people out. And even if it would have been Romney, he would have pulled most of our troops out because the people want that. The American people want that. And now you got McCain again. Oh, we need to bomb, we need to bomb, we need to bomb. And you look at the polls, most Americans support a more measured position that Obama seems to be doing now. Who knows with him? He's kind of a shyster. But, he's certainly not a warmonger, and that's good. Most Americans don't want us to bomb. Right now, most Americans don't. We don't want to get re-involved in Iraq. We already dumped trillions of dollars in there, wasting billions. Disappeared. Just poof, disappeared. Billions of dollars, US dollars, disappeared in Iraq. Who got them? Good question. But they're all back now. They're all pushing for bombing and war, and they're saying Obama's weak and his foreign policy is a mess. I think his foreign policy is a mess for other reasons, but we do not need to be bombing. Remember, Obama came this close to bombing Syria on flimsy evidence, right? It looks like the rebels were the ones who used the sarin gas in that instance. That's the best evidence we've got right now. It looks like the rebels, not Assad, used the sarin gas in that instance. And they have the capability, and we knew that. But Obama didn't even talk about that when he said we need to bomb Syria because they have crossed the red line. But it turns out it was just as likely that it was the rebels that used the sarin gas to get the US to bomb and help them. Right? This is what intelligence people were saying to Obama's people. At the same time that Obama was going, it's Assad, he crossed the red line, he was getting intelligence that said, no, there's a good chance that it was the rebels themselves that used the sarin gas. We talked about this months ago. Seymour Hersh had a great article in the London Review of Books where he talked to people and documented all this stuff, as much as you can document stuff from people who won't talk with their names on the record, right? Fair enough. That's a fair criticism. So now we got Wolfowitz and the Bush neocons screaming for us to get re-involved in Iraq. There was no way we were ever going to fix Iraq. We bombed a country into the Stone Age, destroyed its infrastructure, destroyed its electrical grid, destroyed its plumbing, killed thousands upon thousands of people with our bombs that you and I paid for. Oh yeah, but Bush got Saddam, the guy who tried to kill his dad. Okay, that was worth it? No. The instability, and now we're reaping the results of that. Same thing with Afghanistan. We never had a chance of fixing Afghanistan. But we sent troops in there anyway. It was kind of noble, I suppose, maybe a little. and they just wait us out. Right? What's the point? All right. Don't listen to the neocons saying we need to bomb now and that this is a failure of Iraq, or I'm sorry, of Obama. It's a failure, and it's not a failure of the Iraqi people either. It's a failure of the situation that in large part was created by the U.S. invasion in 2003. The ridiculous, absurd, stupid invasion based on lies told to the whole world by Colin Powell, Dick Cheney, George Bush, Donald Rumsfeld, all of them. Paul Wolfowitz, all these neocons, and now they're back. We need to invade Iraq, bomb Iraq, do what you know, and then you look at what's actually happening on the ground, and the Kurds who are on our side, who are kind of trying to, create their own separate country in the north, right? The ISIS, the terror group that Al Qaeda said, you're killing Muslims, we don't want to have anything to do with you. ISIS grabs a city or a base or whatever, and then within 36 hours, the Kurds grab it back, right? So who are we going to be bombing? They just think bombing. Wolfowitz wants you to believe bombing is, Cheney wants you to believe bombing is the best thing to do. Just bomb him. It's not that easy. It's never that easy. It wasn't that easy in 2003, as we see now. The bombing people are just the worst human beings. They're just the worst. Yeah, let's just bomb them. That's just the worst human reaction. Ugh. All right. So we'll see what the final bill, trust me, Duke Energy is going to be able to push back on anything related to coal ash. We're going to get a really weak, really watered down bill. The head of the North Carolina Republican Party in the House and the Senate, they're not going to let anything go through that is anything firm against Duke. That's my prediction. We'll see if I'm wrong, right? We'll see if I'm wrong. So keep an eye on the final bill that comes out. Not what they're talking about, not what they say they're going to do, not what McCrory has a press conferences and announces about teacher pay, but what the actual end result is. And when you do that, you'll see it's business as usual. You know what I mean? The American Dance Festival is going on. I got to say that if you're not a Duke student, the tickets are kind of expensive, but pick one. Pick one. That sounds good. The Independent last week had their ADF preview, and they have good writers when it comes to stuff like dance and the arts. You may or may not, even if you're a Republican, you may or may not agree with, you may like some of the writers on politics that they have, if you're a smart Republican. At least, I read some conservative writers regularly. I go to the Weekly Standard, not that often, but National Journal, and other, I read people like Crystal. I want to know what they're saying, Bill Crystal. So it engages me, and I can refine my arguments. That's important. So if you're a Republican and you don't read the Independent's political writers, you might enjoy, getting furious at them. But their arts coverage has been really good for a while now. They've had really good coverage of music. It's thoughtful. It's intelligent. I may not always agree with their arts critics. I've written for them. I should announce. I've done some arts reviews for their blog and done some symphony stuff for the paper. But their arts critics tend to be really good. I'll just say that. And so this is last week's Independent, and the ADF, the American Dance Festival. It's an internationally known dance festival that lasts for a month and a half here in Durham, right? Or, down the street in Durham. And if you can find a way, 3 minutes, okay. If you can find a way to choose one, Palobolis would be a big one. They're probably already sold out. They're amazing, Carol says. They are. They're very accessible and also very fun and odd. Odd and accessible at the same time. Just like us, Carol. Odd and accessible, just like us. But the American Dance Festival, if you're new to the area and you've never done an ADF performance, pick one. Even if it's like, it's still interesting. You'll get to Durham, you'll have a drink at the Pinhook or any of those bars on Main Street downtown. You'll go to Duke, you'll see Duke, you'll experience going to a dance thing. It'll be a fun event for you and your loved one. What? Oh yeah. Well, first let me say that there is a really neat thing. Okay, got to go to my Twitter page. There's a really neat thing happening The folks at the Colony often do these odd little movie showings, and they're doing something really neat coming up this Sunday. Oh, dang it, I don't have time. Just go to my Twitter page. I'll link to the announcement. Twitter.com, yeah, there it is, T Mormon. I'll link to it tonight. They're doing a really neat performance or a showing on Sunday, the 22nd, June 22nd, and we're going to be giving away 2 tickets to it. So I'll do that on Twitter sometime in the next 24 hours. Okay. The Raleigh Little Theatre is doing a Noel Coward play, and a couple friends and I went on Saturday, and it was really good. It's Blithe Spirit, which is about a guy who has a seance because he's writing a book and doesn't believe any of that seance stuff. So he invites this mystic lady over. It's very funny, kind of a comedy of manners in the 1940s. And 1 minute, and my throat's killing me, Carol. Can you tell? But it's really funny. The acting's really good. The woman who plays the spirit lady is a hoot and a half. And she's really worth it, the price of admission alone. And it turns out his dead ex-wife shows up. He's married again, so his wife's there. And his dead ex-wife shows up, and only he can see and hear her. And so she's very scathing and sarcastic, and the whole thing's frothy and Noel Cowardy. And anyway, Raleigh Little Theatre does a great job of it, and it's well worth seeing. It's going through this Sunday, actually, the 22nd. So you should check it out if you're looking for a neat evening out. It's at the Rose Garden off Hillsborough Street and Pogue Street. 10 seconds? All right. Take care of each other. Don't get too depressed. Lord knows I have been. And we'll see you next week.